Um, Obviously, at this time, it's hard to speak on what the consequences will be, but
Dustin Johnson just flipped the golf world upside down. From doubts about his decline to dominating the 2025 LIV season, his resurgence is impossible to ignore, but the whispers keep swirling. And today, I'm gonna break down every swing, every rumor, and why the golf universe can't stop watching him. Sand Trap Resurrection. The season began with the kind of quiet, suspicious calm that only precedes absurd drama. Dustin Johnson stepped onto the sun-scorched opening fairways in Riyadh carrying the weight of a narrative everyone thought they'd already written. The decline, the slump, the slow fade into former great. Yet with each swing, he dismantled that storyline like it was a flimsy prop in a low-budget golf soap opera. His rounds, 68, 70, 69, looked tame on paper but crackled with the electricity of a man who'd clearly decided he wasn't done terrorizing leaderboards. The whispers of doubt that clung to him through 2024 suddenly evaporated, replaced by a murmur that felt almost dangerous. He still has it.
really had to think long and hard about, and ultimately I decided to come do this and play out here. And like I said, I'm excited about it, and obviously the Ryder Cup is unbelievable, and it's something that's definitely meant a lot to me, and proud to say that I've played and represented my country, and hopefully I'll get a chance to do that again. But I don't make the rules. So
observers watched him uncork 312-yard missiles from the tee, the kind that didn't just fly, they declared dominance. His fairway accuracy, hovering around a noticeably imperfect 58%, became less a flaw and more a subplot, the kind of recurring quirk that added charm to the spectacle. What mattered was that his iron game glowed like a radioactive beacon of competence, gaining him more than half a stroke on approach each round. The man wasn't just swinging well, he was swinging like he'd remembered a secret no one else had the brainpower to comprehend. And as the tour zipped across continents, from Riyadh's furnace heat to Hong Kong's tropical haze, Johnson's storyline began mutating into something even juicier, a genuine resurgence. That blistering second-round 64 in Hong Kong wasn't a round of golf. It was a declaration, a gauntlet slap, a TikTok-worthy "he's so back" moment that sent social feeds into meltdown. Then came the 402-yard bomb, a drive so violent it felt like the ball needed therapy afterwards. Suddenly, the guy everyone thought was coasting into golf's elder statesman era was out here acting like physics was optional. By May's Miami event, the theme was obvious. Johnson wasn't reviving his career, he was rebooting it with a vengeance. The putter woke up from its multi-year hibernation, strokes gained, numbers climbed, and that signature laconic aura twisted into something far more sinister: confidence. Fans didn't see a 41-year-old player, they saw a storm gaining strength. And beneath every highlight, every stat, every jaw-dropping round, a single question started echoing across the golf world. What happens now that DJ is awake again? Sand Trap Resurrection. As Johnson's campaign barreled deeper into spring, the unexpected became routine. Week after week, he kept showing up as if fueled by equal parts revenge arc and midlife renaissance. The stop in Andalusia crystallized the chaos he'd unleashed. A bogey-free 64 that exploded him up the leaderboard, launching him from 6 shots back to solo second. Fans chanting his initials didn't feel nostalgic. It felt like a reclamation, like an old king walking back into his throne room and finding strangers sitting in his chairs. And the king did not look amused.
I chose what's best for me and my family.
The numbers reinforced the spectacle. Total strokes gained? A steady +0.34, casually reminding detractors that his game still had teeth. Sharp, polished, unsettlingly familiar teeth. Ball striking? Up, efficient, clean. Suddenly, the same golf commentators who'd buried him in cautious language about late career consistency were stumbling over themselves to explain how, at 41, Johnson was beating kids half his age who trained like cyborg athletes designed in Silicon Valley labs. But because every great sports resurrection needs its shadow, there were still the rogue stumbles. A T23 in Singapore whispered that inconsistency was still lurking. A missed team playoff in Chicago added a wrinkle of narrative tension. But this wasn't failure, it was seasoning. It gave the comeback arc flavor. Those hiccups made the good rounds feel feral. They injected unpredictability into the plot, making every tournament feel like a potential explosion. Even his off-course life seemed to shimmer with renewed mythos. Fans glimpsed him balancing world travel with fatherhood, carrying golf bags one day, and wrangling sons Tatum and River the next. Domestic bliss punctuated global competition like a sitcom B-plot dropped into a prestige drama. Meanwhile, rumors swirled, contract whispers, PGA flirts, alleged behind-the-scenes negotiations that mysteriously leaked at the exact time they were most likely to fuel discourse. Johnson brushed it all off with the energy of someone whose emotional bandwidth stretched only as far as his next round. The world watched a man juggling career recalibration, family stability, public attention, and global travel, and instead of collapsing under it, he seemed almost entertained by the chaos. This wasn't a comeback built on desperation. It was swagger reconstructed, and every time he stepped back onto the fairway, the tension thickened. Would this be the moment the Renaissance cracked, or the moment it detonated further? Sand Trap Resurrection. By midsummer, the plot no longer resembled a feel-good redemption arc. It had evolved into a full-blown athletic thriller. Johnson wasn't merely playing well. He was orchestrating a season like a man rewriting his public mythology in real time. Each tournament felt like a pulse check on a resurrected force of nature. The mid-season momentum built like a drumline, each beat louder than the last, each round a reminder that whatever slump he'd endured had only sharpened his teeth. At the heart of this rising storm sat the Four Aces GC, the team he captained with the casual authority of someone who didn't need to shout to lead. His presence reshaped the squad's identity, steady, unshakably cool, and shot through with the quiet menace of a group that knew it could detonate any leaderboard if the mood struck. The early season stumbles, those measly mid-pack finishes, now read like a false opening chapter before the main plot kicked into gear. Hong Kong, top 5 fireworks. Miami, near-miss brilliance. Valderrama, a bogey-free masterwork that had broadcasters reaching for new adjectives. With every performance, Johnson tightened his grip on the season's discourse. Fans didn't just watch him, they tracked him. They refreshed leaderboards like dopamine addicts, waiting for the next leap, the next explosion, the next statistical anomaly that made no sense for a man supposedly past his prime. But the real tension brewed in the undercurrent. The whispers of contract drama, PGA officials allegedly circling, LEV bosses allegedly negotiating, analysts on studio panels throwing out the word merge like it was candy. And in the center of that swirl stood Johnson, silent, unreadable, refusing to give the rumor mill anything except a monotone reminder that he was focused on winning here. The ambiguity wasn't accidental, it was intoxicating. It fueled narratives the way gasoline fuels fireworks. By the time the circuit turned toward its fall finale, the Dustin Johnson saga had morphed into something larger than golf. It was about legacy, leverage, loyalty, reinvention, and the unscratchable itch of unfinished business. He wasn't just chasing a season, he was chasing a new identity. And the fairways, the cameras, the fans, they all sensed it. Something enormous was building, and nobody could look away. Contract aftershocks. The autumn air was still cooling when Dustin Johnson dropped the kind of announcement that could warp the temperature of the entire sport. He was re-signing with Live Golf. Just like that. One terse confirmation, one contract inked behind closed New York doors, and an entire year of rumor crafting, speculative tweets, and PGA-flavored wish-casting evaporated into dust. And yet the aftershocks rippled everywhere. This wasn't merely a renewal, it was a declaration of allegiance in a sport where loyalty had become a currency rarer than fairways hit in a hurricane.
Now, the reason this is so significant is because DJ was part of the first wave of players who made the move to Live Golf in 2022. There appears to be no deal imminent between the PGA Tour and Live, and there's no pathway back to the PGA Tour, so just makes sense for DJ to re-sign, just keep cashing that check. Now, I think DJ can have a late run into his mid-40s like we've seen from Justin Rose, contending in majors, but he just hasn't been the same player since going to Live Golf, but it's still significant because he's re-signing.
The deal was reportedly worth between $50 and $75 million, depending on how many leaderboards he toppled and how many trophies he dragged home. It wasn't the bonanza of his 2022 signing, but it was a commitment etched with meaning. He wasn't dipping a toe in disruption anymore, he was swimming laps in it. The timing was poetic. Johnson was riding the high of a scorching late-season push, his third place in Indianapolis still echoing across golf channels when he signed the dotted line. He'd clawed his game back to life, and instead of leveraging that momentum to jump back into golf's traditional safe haven, he doubled down on the wild frontier instead. Critics were not amused. Traditionalists insisted that Johnson had exiled himself from real golf, as if LIV's global schedule were just a mid-tier traveling circus. His response, characteristically deadpan, was a masterclass in subtle dismissiveness. He had won 3 individual titles in LIV already. That's not nothing. Translation: respect the receipts. But this wasn't just about money or ego. Something deeper had shifted. Johnson's off-course life had undergone its own evolution, a new driver change, because apparently switching clubs 6 times in 1 year is a personality trait, a renewed philanthropic streak, and a family-centered orbit featuring vacations, junior golf lessons, and Paulina's Instagram feeding the public curated snapshots of domestic tranquility. It was the kind of off-course glow that made his on-course aggression feel even sharper, like a polished mirror hiding a blade behind it. LIV CEO Scott O'Neill praised him as a cornerstone, a foundational figure in the league's next chapter: global expansion, new media deals, surging sponsorships. In the swirling uncertainty of merger talks and fractured tours, Johnson's commitment served as a stabilizing beam. His decision wasn't a retreat or a hedge, it was a bet, calculated, steady, quietly defiant. And as the ink dried, the golf world felt the tremor. The era of Dustin Johnson, LIV loyalist, had officially begun. Fairway rumor storms. But no contract, no matter how ironclad, could silence the rumor industry that fed on Dustin Johnson like a hive of gossip-thirsty hornets. The PGA return whispers had been building all year, fueled by a cocktail of desperation, nostalgia, and logistical chaos. Golf's institutional powers had been wobbling through financial turbulence, fractured negotiations, and new pathways to lure defectors back into the fold. And every time someone brought up the possibility of a high-profile homecoming, Johnson's name was inevitably the first to be shoved into the blender.
Breaking news, Dustin Johnson apparently re-signs with LIV Golf. Now, as reported by Flushing at Golf, multiple sources confirm that Dustin Johnson has signed a new contract with LIV Golf. The details of the deal are unknown at this stage. Now, Flushing at Tom is extremely plugged into LIV Golf, so when he reports something like this, I generally take it at face value. Now, it would make sense. DJ just played on the International Series on the Asian Tour this week, and as we know, the Asian Tour has had a heavy investment from LIV Golf. Now, a respectable T15 from DJ this week at 13 under. Tough look for the crowd who thinks he's washed.
The script was always the same. Johnson misses a major cut, rumors spike. Johnson speaks vaguely in a press conference. Twitter has a collective cardiac event. Johnson so much as breathes near a PGA official. Full meltdown. Analysts debated him like he was a political candidate on the cusp of switching parties, not a golfer simply trying to get a clean read on a par 4 approach shot. The speculation eventually took on a life of its own. Absurd, obsessive, almost comedic. Pundits on podcasts swore they had sources. Rory McIlroy urged reconciliation, insisting the game needed unification more than ever. Greg Norman puffed out his chest in defiance, preaching permanence and innovation like a preacher defending sacred scripture. Meanwhile, Johnson kept missing major cuts, 3 in 2025 alone, and the speculation machine howled louder, convinced each stumble hinted at metaphorical homesickness. It didn't matter that his LIV performances were sharp, lucrative, and trending upward. People wanted the soap opera, the return arc, the teary-eyed press conference in Ponte Vedra that would never happen. But when the re-signing announcement dropped, the rumor storm hit a spectacular wall. Every hypothetical, every fantasy scenario, every "he might be secretly negotiating" tweet evaporated in seconds. Johnson had chosen his battlefield, and it wasn't the one traditionalists hoped for. The PGA's attempts at offering amnesty pathways suddenly felt like relics of an alternate universe. Even so, the whispers didn't die. They simply mutated. New theories emerged. Maybe he'd come back in 2027. Maybe LIV and the PGA would merge anyway. Maybe he'd reappear at a Ryder Cup through some loophole crafted by desperate executives. Johnson's public stance remained unchanged. He was committed to LIV, focused on competing, amused, or oblivious to the hysteria near his orbit. In a sport obsessed with legacy, tradition, and reputation, The idea of Dustin Johnson embracing golf's rebellious side created an alluring contradiction. He wasn't chasing the safe ending. He wasn't interested in fan fiction. He was building something slower, stranger, and far more interesting. A future that didn't need the PGA's approval at all. Legacy on fire. By the time the final events of 2025 rolled around, Dustin Johnson's arc had grown bigger than his scorecards. He was no longer just a player in a controversial league. He had become a symbol of golf's seismic identity crisis, a figure caught between eras, mythologies, and competing futures. Yet the strangest part was how calm he seemed amid the storm. While fans and pundits debated his legacy like it was a fragile artifact, Johnson treated the entire conversation like background noise, the kind you forget is playing until someone turns the volume off.
Regarding the majors, are you?
Majors, I mean, it's, again, I can't answer for the majors, but, you know, hopefully they're going to allow us to play. Obviously, I'm exempt for the majors, so I plan on playing there unless I hear otherwise.
Yeah, from my point of view.
He spoke openly about wanting 6 more years of competition, saying the fire still burned bright, which sounded less like a cliche and more like a warning. He wanted more wins, more team dominance, more global events in places traditional tours had overlooked. And he had the platform to chase it. LIV's expansion into new countries, its ballooning sponsorship roster, and its flirtations with global broadcast deals turned the league into something impossible to ignore, whether fans loved it or hated it. Johnson positioned himself at the core of that evolution, not by grandstanding, but by simply showing up with the consistency of a veteran who knew his influence was already built into the architecture of the sport. Younger players studied him, teammates leaned on him, fans recognized his silhouette from miles away. His presence alone added gravitas to whatever fairway he walked, whether it was Riyadh, Valderrama, or some soon-to-be-announced venue in the Philippines. And yet, his legacy remained a tug-of-war. Traditionalists clung to his PGA past, the 2020 Masters, the 2016 US Open, the years of domination that shaped him into one of golf's greats. LIV loyalists embraced his present, the disruptive wins, the leadership, the willingness to challenge a system that long dictated who mattered and why. Johnson didn't publicly choose sides because he didn't need to. His career, as it turned out, had become a hybrid, part legend, part renegade, part architect of golf's strange new horizon. The OWGR snubs still stung, shutting him out of certain majors unless he cross-competed on the DP World Tour. But he treated the snubs as obstacles, not indictments. His performances at Dunhill Links proved he could still hang with anyone, anywhere. And as for the future, he hinted at more wins, more battles, maybe even the possibility, faint, whispered, of some involvement in Ryder Cup debates if the sport ever unified again. Johnson's legacy wasn't shrinking, it was mutating, growing stranger, growing bolder, growing louder. And as the season's final sunset fell across another raucous LIV venue, it became clear, Dustin Johnson wasn't writing a comeback, he was writing a new genre. Dustin Johnson's 2025 season didn't just revive his career, it reshaped the entire gravitational pull of professional golf. His loyalty, his resurgence, his turbulence, and his fire formed a saga no one saw coming. One thing's certain, whatever comes next, the fairways won't be quiet. Comment, share, and subscribe to this channel, and stay tuned for the next spiral.